About 10 years ago, I picked up this alien animatronic from an old arcade, and for the past decade, it's just kind of been sitting in my room, dead. But I was dedicated to finally see him alive again. Just like that. This guy came from a game called Duncan Alien, made by the Ice Company back in the early 2000s, and it was a pretty simple game, similar to skee ball, where you would roll a ball down the lane, and you would try to hit a moving target. If you did it, he would drop down or get dunked, just like an old dunk tank. And the whole time you were doing that, he would insult you. My goal was simple. I wanted him to do three things. I wanted his eyes to move, I wanted his jaw to open, and I wanted to hear him talk. That was it. Sounded simple enough. I was wrong. The first thing I decided to tackle was the eyes. Doing a little digging online, I was able to find the original owner's manual with all the schematics in there, and I thought, perfect, I'll just hook it up to an Arduino using the original hardware and everything will be simple. This will be so easy. Well, I was wrong. Each one of these LED eyes has their own 6-pin connector. I originally just tried hooking them up directly to the Arduino. Unsurprisingly, it didn't really do anything. I think it might have just been a bad IC chip on the board or something, because when I checked the LEDs with the multimeter in continuity mode, they lit up. So the LEDs are working, which was a good sign. So I thought, you know what, maybe I'll just bypass the motherboard entirely and I'll just wire the LEDs directly themselves, like you can see here. The only thing I had to do is just figure out how the matrix worked and then wire the eyes up in parallel so that they were both doing the same thing at the same time, just like a normal pair of eyes would do. Once I figured out the matrix, it was actually pretty simple. Each row had their own power, and each column had their own power, and by connecting a row line to a column line, you could light up any LED you wanted, or any group of LEDs, and then you could just move those LEDs to the left, or to the right, or up and down, or whatever animation you wanted to do. This was great in theory, and I wired it up just like I had showed earlier. But it had a few problems. The first one being that I unknowingly bought this solid core wire off of Amazon. And if you ever worked with solid core wire, it's terrible. It was super brittle. It always broke on me, just like I'm trying to do here. And of course, it's not breaking when I'm doing it on camera. But trust me, it was super brittle and a terrible thing to work with. And then it would come off the solder pads just like that all the time, because it wouldn't stick to solder, it wouldn't solder properly. I mean, it was just horrible. Secondly, my solder job wasn't great. These LED pads were really small, and having to connect that many wires was just a pain. Thirdly, it looked terrible. It was super bulky. The lenses would have bulged out there on the front with those wires sticking over. And then, of course, lastly, the board just didn't work. I don't know what was going on with it. The sides started getting dim. The matrix on the top and bottom was different than like the middle portion was. So it just, I don't know. It ended up not working out. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to just do a different method entirely. So introducing LED Eye Matrix version 2. I really thought this one was going to work. It looks great, very organized. I was kind of proud of it at first. It fit great. Everything looked like it would work well, and I think it should have, in theory. I think I just didn't do a very good job at soldering or something, maybe. Some of the lights would turn on, but some of them wouldn't, and then some of them were dim, and I don't know, there was all kinds of problems with this thing. Like I said, I think it was just a soldering problem. The board was so small and it was hard to work on. Look at my terrible bridging there, and I'm not even sure what this little wire was for, to be honest. I kind of forgot, but I was kind of sad this didn't work out, but I think it ended up for the better, because I ended up trying something completely different that worked, I think, a whole lot better. In the end, I ended up going with an LCD screen. This board gave me a lot more freedom, and it was way easier to work with. Everything came pre-soldered onto the board already with this little quick connector, and I could just plug it directly into a microcontroller, upload the code, and everything just worked flawlessly. Well, pretty much flawlessly the first time. Even though it wasn't original hardware, I'm really glad I ended up going with this, because it just saved me so much headache. And not only that, but I could run custom animations, I could do different colors, I could upgrade it and take it even further than I had originally hoped for. I just remembered that I totally forgot to mention that before I got the pre-soldered ones, I actually bought screens without soldered on them. So this is footage of me trying to solder this all together and get the wires connected and everything. Surprise, surprise, this also ended up not working out. I really don't know what was wrong with it. I think I might have just had a bad LCD, honestly, because I got one of the screens to work perfectly fine, but this other one just wouldn't do anything. It just, the backlight came on, but that was kind of it. So I don't know. I'm glad I ended up going with the pre-soldered ones just so I could rule that variable out, but whatever. Also, if you are familiar with microcontrollers, you might have realized that at this point I've switched over to an ESP32 rather than using an Arduino for a couple different reasons. It's just more powerful, a lot faster, and it has Wi-Fi capabilities, which, spoiler alert, will come into play later. Feeling optimistic with my new pre-soldered boards and my large cup of caffeine ready to go, I thought I was ready to finally tackle the hopefully last time soldering these eyes together. I just twisted these wires together, put a little bit of solder on them like this, and then the only last step was to get a little bit of heat shrink and...
It's EFOC, it's funny.
What was that?
Because it's like coffee spelled backwards, you know? So it's like funny, because it's EFOC. It's coffee spelled backwards, which is funny.
Right, that is funny. Anyways, like I was saying, I just needed to heat shrink them together. And, well, famous last words here.
I'm just gonna do it in my room, bro. I don't care. I don't think it'll smoke. Oh my god. Stop. Bro, it's not even smoky. Dude, that's so annoying.
Yeah, and it happened twice. I'm not sure I did the best job at explaining how the whole screens are wired and working together, but it's pretty simple. Basically, they both just have a wire coming out of them like this, and then there's one lead wire that goes out to the ESP32 that controls both the screens at the same time, which is perfect for a pair of eyes. And you just repeat this process over and over again with all of the 6 or 8 wires or whatever it is that come out of each one of the boards. Admittedly, this is where I started using AI. I've only taken one coding class and it was in Java. I really don't know a whole lot, but luckily for me, ChatGPT knows all about these microcontrollers, so I had him come up with all the code. There's only a little bit of a problem though. Every time that I would run the code, it always flickered. I don't know if it was for poorly optimized code or if it was from just a hardware limitation, but you could see here that it always flickered like this. And even when I tried something else, you could see how the lines were scanning as it was moving left to right. I could just never get it to work. I talked to Claude too. I can never get it optimized fully. The good news was though is I got both the boards tied together and they were working great. Even though they were flickering and I couldn't get the code optimized, this was the biggest win I had in a while, that there was a glimmer of hope for this project. You can see here a demonstration of kind of what the vibe I was going for. I decided to ignore the code for now and I figured I'd just fix it later. But I went into Onshape and designed a little bracket for the LCD screens to sit into that would pop into the eyes of the alien head, and then sent them over to my Bamboo printer and just printed out 2 of the brackets, and eventually ended up hot gluing them into the head just like this. And that ended up working great. Surprisingly, I didn't have any troubles with this. Back to my code now. I figured, what if instead of trying to code for a ball to move left and right frame by frame, what if I just recreated the LED matrix as if it were working in the same way? That way I could simply just turn off one side of the LEDs like this and turn on another row of LEDs to the left or right to simulate movement just as the original LED matrix would have done before, but instead this time I'm just faking it on the LCD screen. And that's exactly what I did, and it worked great. I just simulated a bunch of dots on the screens just like this, and you can see that you can delete them and add them back just like the original LED matrix. I ended up really happy with this at the end because not only does it look great and move great, but it keeps the vibe of the original hardware, which is really cool. What a bunch of tedious work that was. Thankfully though, the hard part was pretty much over. The rest of it wasn't necessarily easy, but it was much easier than dealing with those stupid screens. So with the eyes down, the next part we had to work on was the jaw. The jaw worked from an electronic solenoid just like this. When the system was off and there was no voltage running through it, the piston would remain extended from a spring and the jaw would stay shut from the piston. When 12 volts was introduced into the system, the piston would retract and thus the jaw would open. And this movement was repeated over and over again so that it would simulate the jaw moving as if the alien was talking. The problem with this is that the jaw would take 12 volts of power, the ESP ran off of 5 volts of power, and the eyes ran on 3.3 volts, which came from the output of the logic pins on the ESP32. If I went this route, it would require special MOSFETs and a buck converter and a lot of other hardware that I didn't really want to spend the money on to buy. So I just went ahead and scratched it and instead opted for a servo. More specifically an MG995 servo, which has metal gears and is a little more beefier. It took me a little bit to get the solenoid and its mounting bracket actually out of the alien, but I finally got it out, and now all I needed to do was just find a way to mount the servo onto the piston. So I once again hopped on Onshape, modeled a quick little bracket, and sent it over the printer to be printed out. The quickest way to make this system work was to just tie a fishing string to the tip of the servo to the end of the solenoid piston, and whenever the servo would be pulled in one direction, the piston would be retracted, and when the servo went back in the other direction, the piston would go back out. Don't pay attention to the name in this TikTok, but this shows off basically just how the system worked and how the servo was mounted on with that bracket. This method worked fine. But I was kind of limited in how fast I could make the servo run, so it wasn't as good as I had wanted it to be. I wasn't really satisfied with it yet, and it was also extremely loud, which would have not been great had I put a speaker on it. So I know, you're on the edge of your seat saying, "Ah, Aiden, what did you do? You're all out of options." Well, not really. I ended up just going back to the original solenoid that was in the alien in the first place and just bit the bullet and bought the stuff that I needed on Amazon. However, I did not buy the MOSFET that I needed because I was able to find one in an old power drill that I no longer use or need anymore, so I did not have to buy that. I went ahead and made this little graphic here just to kind of quickly explain how the solenoid worked. I know it probably doesn't make that much sense, but it made sense to me at the time when I made it. So basically you start off with the 12 volt power source. It powers the solenoid directly. Then also coming from the power source is the buck converter, which transforms the 12 volts into 5 volts. Then coming out of there, it powers the ESP32. From the ESP32, it leads to one end of the MOSFET here. The MOSFET basically just acts as kind of a higher voltage transistor, and it can turn off the signal, or turn on and off the signal that goes to the solenoid. So basically the MOSFET just has one end that controls the signal that goes to the ESP32, one end goes to the negative end of the solenoid to control the power going in and out of there, and then obviously all of the grounds are connected for the entire system. I didn't get any footage of me soldering or putting this part together, but I think the diagram basically showed pretty much what I was doing. So I got everything wired up, ready to go, and I went to go test it. Alright, I think I got it. Let's see if everything works. Oh yeah! Boom! Baby, that's what I'm talking about. That solenoid worked. I know it was a little loud. I ended up putting it used to be a foam letter. I put a little piece of foam on the end of it, so every time it hit, it wasn't loud anymore. So with the eyes done and now the jaw taken care of, all that's left is to figure out how to make him talk. Fortunately, making him talk was probably the easiest part of this. I had had some previous experience when I had first started getting into microcontrollers and electronics and stuff. I made a little test project, and admittedly it was a little different than what I've been working on now. Guys, I don't know what I did. It won't stop farting. It won't stop farting. Time. Enter code. What does that even mean, bro? Time. Oh my gosh. But anyways, it was a good learning experience, and I now know how to use sound fairly easily. At least one method. The method I chose to do is something called a DF Player Mini. I chose this for a couple of reasons, but mainly just because it's the easiest way I know of. Basically, that same buck converter that does the 12 volts down to 5 volts is where it gets its voltage in at. Directly from the DF MIDI player, it spins out power to the speakers, so speaker 1 and speaker 2 connected to there. Then there's two data cables, RX and TX. Those are the only two cables that control data, but they go directly to the ESP32, and the grounds are tied together. All the sounds are preloaded onto a micro SD card, and that SD card is put into the DF player. And then through code, you can select which file you want to play and just play the audio. I ended up using a smaller speaker in the final build, but this is the only clip I got of just the DF player by itself without being integrated with the rest of the stuff.
Tell you what, you sit here and I'll show you what it's like to hit the target.
With the eyes done, the jaw done, and now the speaker done, all that's left is, well, nothing. That's it. We did everything we needed to do. The only thing that's left is to just assemble it all together into one main system and then write the code to control everything at once instead of separately. For simplicity's sake, instead of building an entire schematic, I would rather just do this kind of flowchart thing here to explain how everything is assembled together. So basically, everything starts off with a 12-volt power source. The 12-volt power source powers the solenoid and it powers the buck converter. From the buck converter, that powers the DF mini player as well as the ESP. From the DF player mini, it powers the speaker. And between the ESP and the DF mini player, data is transferred. And then from the ESP to the MOSFET to the solenoid is how those are connected, as well as the ESP to the eyes. So 12 volts power, buck is power, ESP is the brains. I know that's not the best explanation and it's very simplified, but that's how it all works. There is one more piece to this whole puzzle which I didn't really touch on just because it all kind of went over my head. I don't really know anything about it. It was mostly ChatGPT, but the ESP32 has Wi-Fi capabilities that you can connect to through a local IP on your home Wi-Fi, and you can access it on your computer or on your phone or anything, and you can do two things with it. You can set up a program to activate it, so I can click buttons to make him do whichever action I want to, say a certain thing, or activate the jaw, or do a certain eye movement. Or on the update page, you can upload new code and refresh without having to plug the ESP actually directly into the computer again. So pretty convenient, but like I said, I just didn't really know anything about it or what to talk about with it, but do know that is a feature that I have added. Also, with Wi-Fi capabilities, I would eventually be able to run text-to-speech. I currently don't have it set up to where it can run text-to-speech locally, meaning I wouldn't be able to play off of the speaker that's inside of him. I would only be able to play text-to-speech through a Bluetooth speaker that is connected to my laptop or my phone, where the phone or laptop is actually doing the computing power for the text-to-speech, and then playing the audio file through there. However, I could control his jaw and his eyes locally without the need for a separate device. But with that being said, let's take a look at everything assembled. You can see here I got everything wired up and I have the local IP user interface set up, and I went ahead and just clicked play. And it all works. You can see that the screen is moving, the solenoid's moving, the speaker's working. It all just works. That's it. I did it. You just saw it. I honestly can't believe I'm finally here. I know maybe to some of y'all it doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but for me, like I said, I've had this thing for 10 years, and I've just been wanting to get him to come back to life for so long now, and it finally happened. All of the pieces were working right in front of me. All I had to do was just assemble it. All I had to do was just put it in him. Pause. So I'll quit yapping. Let's take a look. Okay, I believe it's all ready to go. It's the solenoid's plugged in, the eyes are plugged in, everything is plugged in as it should. Hopefully, when I turn this on, I will be able to control this thing. Finally. And I lost the power cord. You guys ready? Are you ready for this? There he is, in all of his glory, and you can see his eyes are on, which is good. Now, let's... I'm gonna click this button to see if it does something. Wow. Guys. Wow! Can you believe that? It actually works! It did its thing! Well, what now?
Somebody help this guy.
This is honestly the most fun I've had working on a project, probably ever, honestly. I'm super excited to get him working again. I learned a lot in the process. I had fun doing it the whole time, really. Even the bad parts, you know, it was still fun. It gave me something to do. And you can clearly see he's much quieter than he was in that other clip. Let's listen again.
That'll never happen.
Practically silent? What can I say? He did have a broken jaw I had to fix. Not broken, but that's why I was moving so much. If you stuck around this long and watched till the end of the video, shout out to you. You're a real one. This is the first video I've ever made, at least like this. I mean, this is my first kind of, you know, build it video. So if you enjoyed it, let me know. You know, why not? Thanks for coming along for the ride. Peace out from me and my boy Zord here.
Maybe someone else should throw this one.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Oh, totally just realized I didn't hit record on the mic. Yeah, I'm not doing that again. So you get the phone audio.
That'll never happen.